Hey everybody, Livingston here. Today we're jumping into Twilight Zone Season 1 recap, and I'm also going to be going into my top 5 episodes as well as my bottom 3. I only did a bottom 3 because there weren't really that many episodes that I disliked, and even these episodes that I have in my bottom 3 are episodes I enjoyed, they just were weaker than all the rest of them. But let me know, comment below, what you think of these episodes as well as what you thought of the entire season, because in Season 2 I plan on going through the comments section before I jump into the episode and going over what we talked about prior in the episode we actually watched last week. But be sure to like, share, and subscribe to actually join us on this adventure to episode 156 of the Twilight Zone, and I'm going to look forward to going into the comments section in Season 2 and discuss what you have to say about the episode in the week prior. But let's jump into what I thought were my bottom 3 episodes of the Twilight Zone. But let's start with our number 3 choice, The Fever, episode 17. It's a middle-aged man catches gambling fever from a slot machine that he believes is calling his name. Now, I knew what was going to happen at the very beginning of this episode, which is what really brought it down in my eyes. I mean, it's called The Fever. You're at a casino. You understand that he's going to get gambling fever at some point, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, he was a very conservative person. His wife, she was wanting to gamble, but just a little bit here and there. And then as soon as he started putting money in that slot machine and pulling that arm, boom, his life changed, and he ended up actually dying at the very end of this episode. So he was brought down to nothing, spent his life savings. I think he even gambled his house maybe, and then he had that machine following him around. That was the fever. You know, that machine consistently on him saying, pull my arm. Come on, man. You know you want to put some stuff in the slot, and you know you want to keep on trucking and possibly win. And he just couldn't stop himself. And that's what's sad. It ends up really actually touching on a lot of things that people actually go through in their lives with addiction, and that's what this episode was primarily about. Still a good episode. It's in my bottom, but it's mostly because we knew what was going to be coming. We knew it was obvious. Now let's jump into number 2, The Chaser, episode 31. Now it's a desperate man to win the affection of a beautiful woman. He seeks the help of an old professor who provides him with a love potion. It reminds me of Love Potion number 9. It came out in the early 90s. It's Sandra Bullock's first film, I think, romantic comedy. And it's a fun movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but this is more of a darker take. And it's about this guy who wants to have this woman fall in love with him, and she doesn't want anything to do with him. She hates him. She's like, get away. I mean, she has suitor after suitor basically knocking on that door, giving her chocolates, and he's like one of probably many men who want to take her out and make her his wife, and that's what he wanted. And when he gets this potion fed to her, and then boom, she falls in love with him, but we know what was going to happen because the professor even told him inside that library, stating that, you know, once you give her this, you're not going to like the outcome. And he didn't. She wanted everything he wanted. She wanted whatever he wanted to do, she would do it regardless of what it was. She would be sad if she did things that she didn't like, but she would do it regardless. And in the end, he wanted to basically take her out, snuff her out, and be done with her, but he didn't go through with it because he did have a heart. He didn't want to just end her life, and he ended up being stuck in a marriage, a loveless marriage, and we just knew from the very start that that's what was going to happen because it's the Twilight Zone. There's only so many happy endings that happens in this entire season. Very few of them, but I do have a couple of those happy endings on the best of. So also we have a happy ending on this one as well in the worst list, and that's Mr. Beavis, which was episode 30. It's a happy-go-lucky man loses his job, gets evicted, and wrecks his car all in one day. Very sad, but we knew from the start that this guy was going to be happy at the very end of it. I mean, he was too good to be true as a human being. He liked to go outside and play with the kids. He enjoyed doing everything for his neighbors, always saying hi to everybody. But when his guardian angel comes down and basically says, hey, I can change everything that went bad for you today and make your life actually better. But it mostly changed him and made him into a person that he didn't want to be. And I totally understood where that episode was going. And in the end, it was just like, kind of find what you want to do in life. And if you're a nice guy who goes around and enjoys being there for your neighbors and the children of the community and just being a decent person, you don't want to change yourself to actually have another outcome or another job or another profession that would give you more money, because sometimes money isn't where it's at. It's all about the experiences and the people of your life. But it was still a good episode. All of these episodes have wonderful morals and stories behind them. But I just thought these three that I just named off were weak due to the fact that we knew what was going to happen inside these episodes. And we understood where the story was going basically within the first 5 or 10 minutes of it. And I thought the better episodes were the ones where you had to guess what was going on all throughout. It was a mystery, kept you wondering. And that's why we're going to jump into our top 5 episodes, starting with The Hitchhiker, episode 16. A female driver keeps seeing a hitchhiker on the road ahead, beckoning her towards a fatal accident. Now, I like that the answer to the twist started in the very first part of the episode. You see the car accident, and then she survived it. We didn't really, at least me, I looked over the fact that she might have died. I just kind of chalked it up to it was just a beginning of the story, and that's how it began. And then it ends up being that she was a part of that accident, and you don't learn that up until maybe the last 5 to 8 minutes of the episode, and you realize that the guy that she's seeing, the hitchhiker that's consistently on the side of the road, is somebody that she probably didn't want to see at that point in her life. She probably wanted to live a long one, but it turns out this guy was death. And she just had to accept the fact that she died at the very first part of that episode. And I thought that nice twist was just really great. It was wonderfully acted as well. I liked the guy who played Death. He had that hat, consistently staring at her, just nice, friendly, but he had this creepiness about him that I really liked. But it also reminded me of Creepshow 2. There's a segment in Creepshow 2, if you haven't seen it. I won't spoil too much of it, but there is somebody on the side of the road that consistently keeps popping up, and it's because of something that this woman who was driving home after work did. But that's all I'll say. And I also brought it up a few times in the season that a lot of things, a lot of stories in the Twilight Zone are things that I've watched in movies. I've seen stories that were retold, and it's just kind of funny that you see these episodes and go, wow, that's where it came from. That's awesome. But let's jump into the 4th episode, and that's A Stop at Willoughby, episode 30. An advertising executive falls asleep and wakes up in 1888 in a strange but peaceful community called Willoughby. Now, I didn't know what this would be about when I first watched it, other than it was about a man who really didn't like his circumstances in life. His wife was kind of naggy, she was kind of mean, but it was mostly due to the fact that he didn't like his work. He didn't like his profession. It was very fast-paced. He was like in a New York executive kind of office, and he was consistently being hounded by his boss to just work. You got to do it. You got to get ahead. You got to do this. You got to do that. And he just wasn't having it. So on his way home, he's on a train, and he ends up falling asleep. Wakes up in Willoughby in like 1881 or 1888, and he's just sitting there going, where the heck am I? But he doesn't step off the train. And 3 times he gets taken back in time, but it's the 3rd time he actually does step off. Now, what I enjoyed about the episode was that 3rd time when he stepped off the train, he didn't step off into Willoughby. He stepped off to his own demise. He died, committed suicide, didn't like his life, and it ended up being an episode about suicide that I didn't see coming until like the last 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, you didn't know what was going on for the most part, other than the fact that this guy hated it, and I kind of took it as if it was like Somewhere in Time. And if you haven't seen that, it's a Christopher Reeve, early 80s movie, 1980, I think, with Jane Seymour. And he wants to find the love of his life that he sees in a picture within this Grand Hotel. I think it's up in Michigan. If you look at the picture long enough and believe hard, he dressed up in the garb from like the 1800s, or no, it was early 20th century that she was in. And he couldn't, of course, go back in time. But he ended up actually doing that. Found himself back in that era because he believed so hard in wanting to be there and know this woman and fall in love with her. That's what this episode really reminded me of, and that's what I thought it was all about. I thought he was just thinking so hard that if I just believe I can be in Willoughby, I will be, but it ended up being the afterlife instead. So That was a heck of a twist. I didn't see it coming, but that's what made it so wonderful. Number 3, A World of His Own, episode 36. It's Gregory West's wife is jealous when she sees him with another woman in his arms. What I really liked about this episode was due to the fact that it was breaking the fourth wall. We didn't know what was going on for the most part up until the very end when it came to his actual wife. At least I didn't see it coming until like the last maybe 5 minutes, where every person that he wrote about or discussed or described, even not even people, it can be animals, it can probably be anything. I mean, he had the power to just do anything that he ever wanted just by describing something in the things that he was writing in his screenplays. And it turns out that the woman that he kept bringing into his life, that his wife saw through the window, ended up being a character that he was creating. And when his wife came in to question him about it, she wasn't too thrilled. And so he decided to show her by creating it with his tape recorder and then throwing the tape away to erase those characters. Now, what she didn't realize was she was one of those characters and ended up burning the tape that kept her into existence. And I was just like, wow, flabbergasted by it. But I thought what really blew me away was the very end where Rod Serling made an appearance. And it turns out that Gregory West is actually the creator of Twilight Zone. I say that, facetiously because it was actually Rod Serling, but I just like that little nod where it's like, no, he did it, and Rod Serling pops up on his desk and starts talking to the audience, and then suddenly he gets erased by being thrown into the fire. But I really liked it, plus it was a very happy ending. I enjoyed that as well. But let's go into number 2, and that is Where Is Everybody? Episode 1. It's the first episode ever made of The Twilight Zone, and it's a man finds himself totally alone in a small town. His panic escalates into terror as he desperately looks for an explanation. And it was a well-done episode. It was another one where the last 5-10 minutes of it was just like, oh, I didn't know what was going to come until the last moment, the last scene. And that's what really throws these episodes up into my top 5, is when I'm having to guess what's going on. And I love the fact that we were just completely bamboozled, knowing that he was in this town, nobody was there. I mean, he was going around, everything was just gone. I mean, it's like people just vanished. And what ended up being was his mental state was kind of off the wall. It was him inside of this capsule, and they were testing his limits and how long it would take for somebody to kind of go crazy if they're inside this capsule speeding through space. And of course, it took him a few days, but it turns out that the town and everything was his imagination, and he ended up creating it in his own mind to kind of have his own sanity in a way. But I really liked the twist. I enjoyed that it ended up being the United States going in and trying to figure out all these different tests and whatnot to figure out the mental capacity of people and how long it would take for somebody to go nuts inside of a capsule. And it's probably a good reason why they had like 3 guys go up instead of just 1. Let's go into my number 1, and it is Judgment Night, episode 10. I enjoyed this one. It's about a man on board of a freighter during World War II as he's has a premonition of a ship sinking after an attack by a German submarine. Now, the episode starts with this guy just kind of looking out, and he doesn't know how he got there. He's just kind of confused by everything, wondering how he got on this cruise ship. And he kind of gets sucked into a dinner party where everybody's kind of having a good time. And he's slowly starting to realize who he is. Like, he's a captain for a submarine. He's German. Everybody else on the boat is not German. He's the only one. And it's during World War II when Germans weren't really looked on fondly. But, I mean, the entire thing just happens to be something that he ends up being his own personal hell. Reminds me very much of Hellraiser 5. I'm trying to remember what the actual subtitled heading of that movie was, but it was the same kind of thing, or a Jacob's Ladder, where you kind of relive your past transgressions over and over and over and over again for eternity, because you ended up being the German captain that sunk that very ship that you're on, who you end up actually being a passenger or a victim of your own treachery. And I thought that was wonderful. I love the part where he takes those binoculars and looks through them, and he's looking at himself, looking back at him. And it's just, I was like, wow, that was great. I really enjoyed that episode. It could have been a movie, and it has been movies. It has been several movies because I've seen that same story but told differently. But I enjoyed the twist on it. I'm really looking forward to diving into season 2 and seeing what my top 5 are for that season. But let's jump into the comments section and see what you had to say about the season in general. I won't jump into all the comments, but I will go through quite a bit of them and kind of go through what you had to say about some of the episodes here. So let's jump into the first one, which is from Stephen Mark Hansen for episode 36. The episode in particular marked Rod's continued on-screen appearances in the opening narrations of the 4 consecutive seasons. Well, that's cool. Now we have this comment from P Sparks 3419. Congrats on completing the first season commentary. Well done. Thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate the love and support from all you guys, so keep on tuning in, and we're going to keep on trucking. We have Rick Kinnett 3192, sorry. Those dictaphone tapes were exactly how Rod Serling wrote his Twilight Zone scripts. Oh, well, that's great. That's cool to know. X-Man 9473, this is one of my favorite episodes of the entire series. The episode was heavily comedic in tone, which is a perfect way to end the season. I agree. This is the first appearance of Rod Serling on screen. This is true. And this is also the only time in the show's history where Rod Serling breaks the fourth wall. Well, that's awesome. But most importantly, depending on whether you think this episode is canon or not, as it is an anthology, Rod Serling's appearance closing narration implies that Gregory West controls the Twilight Zone and even created Rod Serling as his narrator. Meanwhile, everything that happens in the show happens because of Gregory West's playwriting abilities are so powerful. Well, that is a pretty cool observation. I did actually think that myself. So, yeah, I agree. It could be a possibility. And we have Fran 8. Slightly off topic, there's a 2012 movie, Ruby Sparks, with a similar plot. An author writes a woman into existence. It's good. It's a good movie for a one-time watch. I have seen Ruby Sparks, and I did really enjoy that movie as well. And yeah, another one that actually shows up on our radar as being a movie that actually has its origins from a Twilight Zone episode. Thanks for the comment. Now this is for episode 35, The Mighty Casey. This comment is from Adios Omatic A. It's a good name. The first one still gets me to this day. I cry like a little baby, LOL. The one where he goes back and meets himself. We have one from user TM. That's a long one, but okay, I will put forth my top 5 and bottom 5. Top 5 shows that they have. I Shot an Arrow into the Air. Number 2, Time Enough at Last. Number 3, Walking Distance. Number 4, Stop at Willoughby. And number 5, Elegy. Bottom 5, The Big Tall Wish. Number 2, Mr. Beavis. Number 3, Nightmare as a Child. Number 4, Perchance to Dream. And number 5, The Chaser. But it is Twilight Zone, so they are all good. I definitely agree. We actually have the same ones in the bottom 3. Well, actually 2 of them, Mr. Beavis and The Chaser. So that's pretty cool that we had the same ones there. And the Stop at Willoughby. And I thought about putting Eulogy on there as well, but I ended up keeping it off. It probably was in my top 10, but thanks for the comment there. Sausage Happy Meal X9931 can buy the Hoboken Cypher's jersey on eBay. Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, I guess you can get the jersey from the episode on there. That's good to know. Vlad Lornoff, great. It is very interesting to see your joint with Chad detailing reaction to the film RoboCop. Do I have any plans to do it? I might, but we're talking Twilight Zone here. But thanks for the comment there, Vlad. Okay, now we'll move into episode 4, and the comment section here has Brandy74. Interesting episode, and that's crazy that it wasn't the actual woman at the end. So lifelike. That's true. Actually, that was I think it was a death mask. That's what they used. I mean, she wasn't dead, but that's what they did to actually have that the face look so realistic. Dino Nardelli, classic episode, and they did a great makeup job on the mannequins. Looks just like the actors. Also, it was an interesting idea to use an object, in this case a gold thimble, as a callback to reality. And if this is the After Hours we're talking about, and it was a good episode. I enjoyed the After Hours. I liked that they had also an episode that was probably in my top 10 as well, because the ending, we didn't know that she was really a mannequin until like the very last part of the episode, so I really liked that twist. MLJK3SZ says, good stuff, very cool episode. I agree. Robert Schulenberger says, I think you would enjoy the Twilight Zone movie. However, there was a sad and unfortunate accident that happened to one of the lead actors, Vic Moreau. I do know about that accident, and I will have the Twilight Zone movie up, and you will learn all about it once you watch that. But tune in for that. I'll probably be coming up pretty soon, actually. And really looking forward to jumping into future movies like it, like Creepshow and whatnot. So look out for that as well. But we're going to go into episode 33, Mr. Beavis, which is on my top, or I should say bottom 3 episodes. Ghost Daddy 87 says, chill episode. It was kind of just a laid back sort of episode. You knew what was going to happen, and it was a nice, decent episode. The Cosmic Kid 2562 says, exact same plot as the Carol Burnett Angel episode. Didn't see that one, but I'll take your word for it. Fran, I gotta, if that's how you say it, Fran 8 says, thanks for the objective look at this episode. I see so many people hate on it for whatever reason. I've always liked it. I liked it too. It's not, I don't think it's a bad episode. I don't think a lot of people think it's a bad episode, but in comparison to other Twilight Zone episodes, it's probably lower. I mean, that's why it did end up on my bottom of list, but I still enjoyed it. It's all great episodes. Debbie Ann 7962 says, Henry Jones, who played the Guardian Angel, is in quite a few Alfred Hitchcock Presents episodes. I have been told to actually check that out at some point, so I might. I'm not sure when. I mean, I have quite a few episodes to go on the Twilight Zone, but we'll see what happens. P.S. or P. Sparks, I keep doing it. P. Sparks 3419 says, Livingston, thank you so much for doing commentary on this show. I've watched all of them, and I've greatly enjoyed your insights and quick wit. I only wish I could get my friends to watch this show, but there's little chance of that since it's not in color. But to me, it looks awesome in black and white. Keep up the great work. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it, and I will keep on trucking. I'm enjoying all the stories that are popping up here and really loving the experience of it. But yeah, I will. And let's go on to episode, what is this episode? Episode 32. And that would be, I have a couple comments here. We got Debbie Ann again, 7962. A top and bottom 5 would interest me when you've completed season 1, which I've done. And I've actually watched every episode and have written down my favorite to least favorite episodes. All 156 of them. Wow. John Anderson, who plays Gabriel's character in this episode, was also in 4 episodes of the Twilight Zone, equaling Jack Klugman and Burgess Meredith. I enjoyed listening to your trivia at the end of each episode, and I'll keep on trucking with those. We're talking about a passage for trumpet, which was a really interesting episode. It has Jack Klugman in it, and that's what they were talking about. He, I guess, really wanted to just play his instrument, and he couldn't really do it because he was a drunk. He was kind of messed up in life, and it really dealt with depression. A lot of season 1 kind of deals with depression in a lot of ways. God is Love, SW9HF. I always watch every episode you react to. Love the breakdown you gave at the end of the episode. 2023 was rough for me too. My brother's best friend got killed right in front of him after leaving a football game. Wow. Sometimes life will throw you random things in your way, especially because we live in a broken world. But no matter what it throws at us, I'll fear nothing. I'm protected by the blood of Jesus. Well, God bless to you, and I'm really looking forward to jumping in and continuing on to this. I'm very sorry to hear about your friend. Yeah, I was saying how rough things were for me. in 2023. I wouldn't say that it was rough, like horrible when it came to like the character of Jack Klugman. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't doing anything stupid like that. But my stepfather passed away, and it kind of just threw a lot of things up in the air about life in general. And I was kind of dealing with stuff with my mom, and it's just it's life, and you just got to get through it. And I'm very happy to see that you're continuing on with me on this journey to episode 156 as well, and really looking forward to it. But let's move on to the next one here, and it is The Chaser, which is the love potion, which actually was in my bottom 3. Debbie Ann 7962, thank you again for the comment. Great video, not my top 5 or 10 episodes though. Yeah, that's why I ended up in my bottom 3. Brandy74 says, good episode. People might get to great lengths for love or what they perceive as love. Sometimes a reality check is necessary to truly understand. This is true. Ghost Daddy 87 says, enjoying these, but binge over though. Oh yeah, I do remember him saying something like that. It's because he ran out of episodes, and yeah, sorry about that, bud. I can only do one a week right now. And Sad Bunny says, ah, yes, the simp episode. Yeah, I guess so. All right, let's go on to episode 30, A Stop at Willoughby, which was on my top 5, actually. Now, Nene Shubby says, cool name, by the way, this was a theme Rod Serling visited again and again in his writing, the idea of dealing with the pressure of a high-profile job and escaping into one's past somehow. Serling was a highly driven man and was consistently dealing with pressure. Some of it was his battles with the networks, but also self-inflicted pressure. By the time he died, he was reportedly drinking more, having marriage problems, and seeing a psychiatrist. When he died on the operating table, he looked much older than his 50-year-old self. Yeah, I heard about that. I mean, it kills people. Stress, depression, it really can take somebody out real quick. And it's usually them taking themselves out because it's them having to deal with it by drinking, smoking, just doing things that are bad habits that end up screwing your body up, and suddenly you're in a horrible place mentally, physically, and you end up dying. But it's very true. Thanks for the comment. Brandy74 says, I like your interpretations of the episode. It seems like he valued being at Willoughby more than the life he was living, as if it was a positive escape from a negative reality. Who wouldn't? A nagging wife at home and a boardroom of cranky old men versus a quaint, happy little town where everyone knows your name. Yeah, just like Cheers. So, thanks for the comment there. Elmer Medina 1713 says, Oliver Mestrel, push, push, push. Gart Williams, I'm not pregnant. Good one. Dan Quality says, this is my favorite episode. Hey, ended up in my top 5, so great minds. The Sunset James says, have you ever thought that when you started watching the early Twilight Zones in your young age, whether you watched it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or whenever, that you never ever thought it was trying to tell you something important to your life? You always thought it was just entertainment. Then you become very old in your life and start realizing the Twilight Zone was trying to warn you, but you didn't listen. Sadly, you may have realized it was too late. It's like since the Twilight Zone started, we were all put into the Twilight Zone. That's true, but haven't we always been in the Twilight Zone in some respect? I agree with you there. You watch things and it really doesn't come into perspective until you've actually gone through it. And it's kind of sad that some people just don't realize it until it's too late. And I think in a lot of ways I've realized things before it's become too late. And sometimes I want to go back in time and change things, but you can't do that. And I'm still young enough where I can make changes to the point where when I'm going forward, I can make things better for myself. So let's keep on hoping, right? All right. Debbie Ann 7962 says, you're making me feel hot, all rugged up as if it's summer here in Australia. This due to what I was wearing. It was very cold when I was doing these episodes. A great episode in my opinion. Push, push, push. Gets stuck in my head. Love that Willoughby and Sons were the funeral directors that picked up Gart's body at the finale. That's true. Yeah, I did like that little touch. Yeah, they had a 24-hour TZ marathon on my local station. This is from matchu.j. The way this is edited reminds me of Mystery Science Theater minus the robots. I could take a hit and hang out with this guy. Thank you, sir. Pretty appreciate the comment, but yeah, come on to Georgia and hit me up. You know? Brandy74 says, I looked up the door handle in the middle of the door. I mentioned something in the episode where in the middle of the door there's a door handle, and I thought it was very strange. And it apparently proved more security with a crossbar across the door to keep it more reinforced and support. Very interesting. Seems odd for sure. I did agree. Thanks for the comment there. God is Love says, love your reactions, brother. Second season got some great episodes. Definitely looking forward to that. Me too. I'm really looking forward to that one. Thanks for the comment there. P. Spark says, that's actor Tim Daly's father, James, in the lead role. Both very talented men. Very true. I liked him in Wings. User says, I think Willoughby is his version of heaven. By the way, I'm sorry you are cold there. I am retired and live in the USA. Winter month in Tanzania, Africa, pretty hot here. I bet. It does sound hot. We're still cold here, sadly. It's February, middle of February, so I'm really looking forward to it warming up. Justin K21 says, honestly, I love this series. Please keep it up. Thumbs up. Thank you, Justin. I will. Ghost Daddy says, first video I'm watching of yours. I like it. New sub. Beyond Belief Factor Fiction was good too. I actually watched the heck out of that when I was in my teens or whenever that came out, late 90s, early 2000s. So I was definitely in my teens when that was going on with Jonathan Frakes. Awesome. Thank you for subbing and thanks for joining along. I'm enjoying it, and it's just, you want to keep on chugging along, my friend. Now we're going to jump into episode 29, Nightmare as a Child. Daniel Start EK 9729. I'm just going to say Daniel. This episode makes your hair stand on end. That's true. I thought it was a very, well, it bothered me. It really did. When I watched it, and being that the girl ended up being her younger self that was in the hallway, and she was basically suppressing a memory, and her younger self was coming into her imagination or into her mind and saying that you need to remember this event that happened to you when you were my age. And she ends up remembering, and it ends up saving her life in the end. So, Rabid Nemo, that's a cool name. I always found this one to be really intense, and I love the acting from the little girl. I believe she was in another episode too, but I can't quite recall. Well, if she was, I look forward to it, because she was very good. I do agree with that. Thanks for the comment there. Rick Kinnett 3192, the doctor over-explains things at the end of that the audience had already worked out, and the little girl had already explained herself. Maybe Serling wasn't sure the viewers would get it. If so, he underestimated them. Yeah, this is true. Robin Nemo actually replied to him, well, you have to factor in that he was under heavy pressure from the studio to make changes and take money from advertisers, which would have required further changes to the show. It was also the first season of the show, and most episodes would have been already filmed and cut together by the time they started airing, so perhaps he wanted to be a little more cautious with the early episodes. This is true. It's sometimes you got to please those producers and the ones that are backing the episodes, and kind of maybe you got to dumb it down a little bit to make them happy, but yep, good observation there. Empire Jeff says a scary one. I agree. Brandy74 says, good episode. I agree. Very predictable. The man gave off such major creepy vibes right away. I wonder how many episodes do end on a good note. Well, so far it was only like 4 episodes, something like that. It wasn't that many out of the 36, I know for a fact, but let's jump into episode 28, where it is a nice place to visit. This episode, it was okay. It was kind of a give and take sort of episode to me. But let's jump into the comments section here. And Elmer Medina 1713 says, Pip's evil laugh is meme worthy. I agree. That was a heck of a laugh. Toy Live 88, Pip sound like Bagheera from the Jungle Book. I think the guy who voiced Kaa in Winnie the Pooh was also in an episode. Very possible. It's something I should definitely look up. Brandy74 says, as a child, I watched that episode. First, Rod Serling's narration and the eerie Twilight Zone music always gave me chills. Still does. Every episode. Secondly, I recall finding Rocky incredibly selfish and rude. I couldn't comprehend how Mr. Pip granted him everything he desired to begin with. Well, I mean, it was almost like the episode... they kept going. Your observation about how everything he desired turned into his own personal hell is spot on. I consistently appreciate your reactions and trivia. A Twilight Zone podcast sounds really cool. I'll be listening. Well, here we are. We're doing the podcast, so I'm really enjoying these comments sections. Yeah, the guy was very rude. He was definitely a jerk in these episodes. But, I mean, sometimes when you get what you want, much like the episode The Chaser, you just don't get what you want in the end. You want to have people their own, with, their own mind of their own. You also, when you have life just given to you, you don't appreciate it as much as, say, when you earn it. And when you, I guess you have people in the world that actually have that today who are just rich beyond their means and end up just getting what they want, and maybe it makes them act out to where they're doing drugs. I mean, that's what happens when you get into Hollywood and you're given all this fame and you're given all this money, and then suddenly it's like you're trying to please everybody, but at the same time you have all the stuff in the world that can, that most people desire, and the fact that he had everything and it ended up just making him depressed at the very end very much parallels what many people go through in life. Derek71647 says, keep reacting, these shows are great. I am, and I want to keep on trucking. And let's jump into episode 27. I'm looking forward to, let me see here, what is episode 27? Here we go. Episode 27 is The Big Tall Wish, which was a really good episode about a guy who really wanted to win, and there was a little boy that really looked up to him. And the boy ends up wishing so hard to the point where he does actually win. It actually changes time, changes what actually happened in that ring, and puts, instead of him being knocked out, it put the guy that knocked him out down on the ground and makes him the champion. But when he learns that it was a wish and it's not real, it just made it all kind of go away for him. But X-Man 97373 says, this was one of my most underrated episodes. This wasn't a tragic episode where someone gets screwed over. This wasn't a happy ending either. This wasn't some revenge story of a prick receiving justice. This was an episode where every main character had logical reasons to feel the way they did and had an ending with everyone still content with themselves. Unique episode format. Very true. Also, fun fact, having all black main cast was a rarity for American television during that time, so this episode was groundbreaking. Very true. I don't remember seeing too many episodes like this back in that time, but until you get to like Star Trek, which is like mid-60s, early to mid-60s, it was like 65, 64 when it came out. But, when you had Uhura come into the fold. But, it was very awesome. I think they did a lot of groundbreaking things for the Twilight Zone back in the day. But Brandy74 says this was a good episode with great life lessons. Most of them are, it seems like. A lot of these episodes were great life lessons. God is Love says, yes, it was a fun episode. I enjoyed watching his reactions for sure. Can't wait for the next one. Well, let's keep on trucking. We got Nene's hubby. The thing I like about this episode is Rod Serling doesn't trumpet the fact that he had an all-black cast. Race is never mentioned in the story, and a strange thing happens. After a minute or two, you don't pay attention or even once notice it anymore because you're just too invested into the story of human beings. That's something today television could learn from, as they consistently try to trump the fact that they're attempting to preach a social message to you. People will pay attention to good human stories no matter what the race, if they're good and well-written stories, and this is coming from a black person. Well, thanks for the comment, and yeah, it doesn't matter about race, it doesn't matter about religion. As long as the story is awesome, I mean, that's all that matters in the end, right? God is Love actually responded to him, and she says, or I don't know why I said she, they, I don't know who they are. I know it's difficult, but try not to be so a part of the world. Ignorance is bliss. Don't focus so much on what society thinks. One day you'll pass away and the earthly battles won't matter anymore. Well, this is true too. I do agree with that statement that, race doesn't matter. And I think that's where Nene's hubby was actually coming from as well. Race doesn't matter. It doesn't. Gado's Love also says, I can tell you don't watch boxing at all. It's true. I don't watch too much of it unless it's a Rocky movie. Maybe back in the day they set stuff up when the MOB was running things in America, but they definitely don't do those things like that anymore, especially because the penalty is serious if they're caught for setting up a fight. They don't play games no more in the sport of boxing. My dad's a huge boxing fan, so we watch every pay-per-view boxing match that there is. Well, yeah, I don't watch a lot of boxing. This is true. So I don't know when it came to the rules of things. I think I might have mentioned the comment kind of stating that, if they fix the fight or set it up to where you're supposed to lose. And it's probably true. They probably have a lot of rules and regulations now, just like a lot of sports. They have a lot of rules and regulations. And it's interesting to see that I'm totally ignorant when it comes to boxing and the rules of the sport. But let's jump into episode 26, Execution. Now, I like the way this episode started and the way it ended. You had this guy who was getting ready to be executed, and suddenly he finds himself in the future. So this is the second episode. This is from Dean Strickson. This is the second episode in the first season of the Twilight Zone to star a real-life murderer as the main character. The other being Gig Young from Walking Distance. It's also not the last. Wow. Oh, yeah, I do remember reading about this guy murdering somebody. I looked it up when I read this comment back when this actually aired on my channel. But, yeah, thanks for the comment, buddy. Nene's Husband. This is a good episode, mainly due to the good performance of reliable character actor Albert Salmi. But I have two gripes about it. One is how the doctor clearly realizes he's dealing with an unstable, violent man, yet telling him he's going to send him back to be hung. Makes no sense. And the second is that then Wynn, who plays the burglar, is way too small to physically overpower a big man like Caswell. But overall, an entertaining episode. Yeah, I have to agree with all of that. I mean, I do remember thinking back on the episode going, why would you trust this guy that you pulled from the past, who was a murderer, that you knew actually was being hung at the time of him being brought to the future? Yeah, why would you trust him? But it's sad that he did. Stephen Mark Hansen says, I'll dance a jig for you, Pappy. It's true. That was in the episode. Red Scorpion says, how can you have 157 likes and no views? That's a Twilight Zone thing. I'm not sure what you're looking at there, but I don't have 157 likes on this episode, but I had 2 likes on it back when you made that comment. I probably have a few more now, but Red Scorpion continues on. Good episode. Salmi was a real douchebag in real life, killed his wife, and actors complained about him. Well, yeah, if he killed his wife, I can see why he got some complaints from the actors. I mean, I know he didn't kill his wife before this episode, but I'm sure I get why he was considered a dick if he ended up being a murderer in the end. Now we have episode 25, People Are All Over, and this one is, I'm trying to remember this episode. I am totally drawing a blank on this one. What is People Are Always? Let me see here. Nene's hubby says, I always found this a hard episode to quantify. The Twilight Zone is great at making you feel uneasy with a sense of disquiet. Some of that is because we know it's the Twilight Zone and there's almost certainly a twist coming, but as you mentioned, it's great making you feel tense. I guess this is about species domination. I do remember what this is now. It is the natural way of things. Are freedom and civil liberties actually an abnormal way of behaving for people? In the animal world, the strong dominate the weak, but unlike human beings, it's mostly about survival and there's no sense of morality involved. With people, there's the sheer perversity of being the dominant species on the planet and destroying or controlling others for the sheer joy of it. That's why I've always loved the book 1984 and O'Brien's speech to Winston when he tells them the party has stopped trying to self-delude itself to I'm not even going to say that word. Totalitarian movements, I did it, having and trying to tell themselves their horrible actions are undertaken for a greater good or building some type of better society. No, the party dominates for the sheer desire for power, and power and domination is the end goal unto itself. Power is its own reward. That's what's happening here. The Martians see an inferior species and control it just as he probably would. Yeah, I had to be reminded what this episode was, where an astronaut lands on another planet, and he ends up getting put into a zoo by a more a dominant species, smarter species, and he ends up just being somebody to be looked at. It's kind of sad, but it is what it is. Now we have the Seraph Network. I think that Conrad's dialogue at the beginning, where he talks about his use of microscopes, nicely foreshadows the ending. Yeah, it's one of those episodes I would love to revisit at some point and kind of look at. Actually, a lot of the episodes kind of see the little hints that they drop before we actually get to the very end. Surprise. Typically, that's what happens with these episodes. Now we're going to jump into Season 1, Episode 24, which is Long Live Walter Jameson. It's about a guy who is an immortal. And he ends up telling one of his best friends that he is an immortal, and he's marrying his best friend's daughter. And he knows that at some point that the daughter's going to be heartbroken if he chooses this man, and he doesn't want it to happen. But Derek71647 says, thanks for reacting to these. There's very few people on YouTube that are reacting to the Twilight Zone, so I'm glad you are. This is a really good episode, one of my favorites. It was a good episode. I'm not sure where it would rank if I did like all 36 episodes, but I'm sure it would probably rank pretty high among them all. But Akira Lux says he was hella lucky to live that long, yet mortal. But he was mortal to injuries. This is true. Yeah, like he wasn't immortal. Like he was immortal, but if he got shot or killed, or he was always careful, I guess, with himself. So he never, I guess, hurt himself up until the very end of this episode. Joan Mayer 304 says, take a look at Rod Serling's The Night Gallery. It is a very entertaining, especially the caterpillar in A Feast of Blood from Canada. Well, thanks, Joan. I appreciate that. I will definitely check that out. Debbie Ann 7962 says, thanks for the trivia at the end of each episode, which I find very interesting. Estelle Woodward, who lived to be 101 years old, smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Good genes, I guess. A likable episode. That's true. I think George Burns also smoked like cigars for the majority of his life up until he was like 100 years old. So, I mean, some people are lucky with those genes that they can just kind of go through and not have to worry about hurting themselves in the end. But it sucks that some people don't have that. But jumping into episode 23, A World of Difference. This is from Mick Keldon, 1961. A top 10 episode for me. I love the ones about a middle-aged man who tries to escape or succeeds in escaping a deeply unsatisfactory life. Can't imagine why I would love those particular episodes. Yeah. Why would you like those kind of episodes? This is from Michael Stallings 5824. His manager David White played on Bewitched as Larry Tate, Darren's boss. Yeah, I did know that. Derek 71647 says, great episode. Thanks for your reaction. Thank you for the comment. Debbie Ann says, again, this is my favorite Twilight Zone episode. The other episode you're talking about was 16mm Shrine, also in my top 10. Found your channel yesterday and have been enjoying watching all your reactions. Happy New Year 2024 from Australia. Well, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate the comment, and I want to keep on trucking along here. All right, we're going to get to, what's the next one here? The next one is episode 22. The monsters are on Maple Street. I do remember this one. This is the one where power goes out, world goes crazy, and it ends up being some kind of an experiment that the aliens are playing on the human beings, that you turn off power and just take away a few things, watch how fast society crumbles. And it's eerily creepy that it could be very true. John Shields wrote, I was born in 1960 Boston. It really was that way, kind of. Info didn't travel fast. There were still mysteries, very naive compared to today's instant info. But yeah, what would the world be like, though, today when everybody is so much into phones, computers, television? Just, we're in the digital age where, I mean, you have to consistently stay on top of everything just to stay up with what's going on in the world. And back then, I think it was a little slower. Things weren't as quick moving. But if you turned off things today, I think it would mess up things a whole lot more than it would have back then. Bruce Dillinger 9448 says, a classic amongst classics. I agree. It was a very good episode and probably would have ranked high as well. Ricky Connor 6782 says, your comments are spot on. Appreciate it. Thank you for that. Rudolph Brown 8754 says, paranoia is dangerous. Very true. I mean, your mind can play more tricks on you than actual tricks. And it sucks how fast that people can go downhill just by listening to other people or hearing what the other people are saying in comments. And if you just actually sit down and think logically, sometimes your answers will come to you more so than freaking out about it. Now we're going to jump into episode 21, Mirror Image, which I thought was a very interesting episode. I mean, a woman was at a train station and she ends up seeing herself, and it turns out she is like in another parallel dimension or world or reality. It's a very interesting episode. I really liked it, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to put it in my top 5 or not. It didn't end up there, but let's read what the comments are about them. Mr. AI Training. We'll go with that. Yeah, this one creeped the hell out of me when I was a kid. Yeah, I can see how it did. Derek 7 says, the bus station is the turning point, the gateway to another dimension. Yeah, true, very true, because it happened twice. He also says, great reaction. I love the classic television show. Yeah, I'm loving it myself. Chris N7259 says, the moment when her double is looking at her from inside the bus still gives me the creeps. Yeah, I mean, it kind of gave me some chills as well. Patrol Officer 161 says, Rod said that he was in an airport when he saw a man across the staging area that was wearing the exact same clothing and carrying a briefcase exactly like his. He was using what-if theory of writing and asking himself, what if that was me? The outcome was this episode. I use the same approach to my writing and never run out of ideas. Yeah, I do the same thing. I do a lot of writing myself. I'm in the process of making my second feature film. So I'm always consistently writing down ideas that pop into my head from life experiences, really. And it's awesome. Rod did the same thing. A lot of writers do the same thing. Rob A. Gabor says, this is one of my favorite episodes. I saw it when I was a kid, and the part where she sees herself in the mirror sitting on the bench freaked me out and stayed with me for a long damn time. That's part of my favorite piece of trivia. This episode was released in early 1960. Later in 1960, Vera Miles will be in Psycho, where she also has a freak out moment when she sees herself in the mirror, when she's investigating Mother's bedroom. Oh, I really didn't place it. I didn't add, 2 and 2 there and realize that was her. But yeah, good catch there. Dennis Swanston 411, Martin Milner from the series Route 66, and Adam 12 was in this episode. TikTok Melody 9190, one of my favorite Twilight Zones. I think this was the second one I ever saw after Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. It's also my favorite obscure episode. I never see this one mentioned as much as the other classic episodes. I know it scared the hell out of me when I was a little kid. I remember the next 2 I saw after this was Time Enough at Last and The Lonely, and I was shocked. I was lucky to even see great episodes at first. Now that I've seen them all, I can see when they fall into a formula. It turns out the character is dead or the character he's talking to is death. But this one, creepy. Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the comment. Donovan Medieval says, spoiler, that's why Martin Milner first started driving down Route 66. He was chasing his double. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, great episode, though. I'm surprised I didn't put it on my top 5. It was one of those where I kept going back and forth. I wasn't sure about it, but it didn't end up there. So let's jump into the next episode, which is Eulogy. It's episode 20. I can't say that word. Mr. AI Training. I think it's AI Training. I'm going to go with that. Love that you're doing these, brothers. Such nostalgia for me. Add-on edit. Yeah, the first season has a lot of dark episodes. Yeah, for sure. Lots of dark episodes. Steve the Duck 1425 says, this one is remarkably like a Ray Bradbury Martian tale, where the Martians assume the humans to be escaped lunatics and do with them what they must. Make them happy. Yeah. I don't remember this episode as much as I should. I mean, I do remember reading about it, and I was going to put it on my list, but I'm trying to remember what it was. Here, let's look it up real quick. I'm totally drawing a blank on elegy now, or eulogy. I don't know why I said elegy. This one is about 3 astronauts touch down on an asteroid where they discover a world of people that appear to be frozen in time, confused. Oh, yeah. I can't believe I forgot this one. Why would I forget this one? But, it was an okay episode. I wasn't blown away by it, but I definitely enjoyed it. I don't know. I didn't have that much comments from it, so I guess I'm not alone, and I really didn't leave a great impression on my brain. But anyways, let's dive into the next one, which is season 1, episode 19. 2 other episodes I recommend if you haven't already. This is from Michael Stallings, Eye of the Beholder and Nothing in the Dark. I'll probably get to those. But, this is the one where the guy ends up seeing other people, they light up and they realize, oh no, you're going to die. And he ends up seeing himself glow, and he ends up dying. I think this was during World War II or something. And so he knew exactly what was going to happen. Vincent Saya 545. I think Dogface goes back to World War I. I actually made a comment and said Dogface because I think it's something that Biden said, and he said Dogface Pony Soldier. And they also said it inside the episode as well. But yeah, it goes back to World War I. That's crazy. Laha says, with great power comes great responsibility. Many superheroes don't want the powers because it's more of a burden than something helpful, cool, or fun. I don't blame that guy for accepting his fate because the alternative seems to be a terrible burden. You're always seeing the worst of people's futures, and even if you can do something about a few of them, you wouldn't be able to save the majority. Then there's the horrible looming fear of the day you see the face of a loved one light up, or your own. And let's say he didn't die on the way to command. He gets the command, tells what's going on because he wants them to believe him. He proves it. We know the military isn't retiring him. He's in a lab or a special program with who he knows much freedom to live his own life. At least by choosing to accept his fate, he doesn't have to suffer, live in fear, or continue to know what no human being should know. There would be plenty of people today who would milk that power into a way to make money or whatever, but I don't know what it'd be like if I woke up tomorrow and had the horrible ability. It's mentally, emotionally, and just overall too heavy a burden. I don't know if that's something I could live with for the rest of my life, though it's very possible to be a mega hermit today. So maybe it's doable. It's true. Future Generations with a Z says, interesting insight with World War II being the last egomaniacal maniac. If Hitler had won, we might not be saying that. I think we're there again myself. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, today's reality is not a fun one when it comes to world policies and what's going on. So, yeah, it's hard to say, but let's jump into the next episode, which I'm not going to read all the comments to this one because this ended up being my biggest episode. I have 60 comments on this one, but let's read a few of them. X-Men 9473 says, this episode is so ahead of its time, the way they managed to have a character go forward in time, then played with the concept of destiny and maintaining the future, then the concepts of war. This stands out by a mile. Genius. This is the 18th episode, The Last Flight, where a man ends up flying his plane from that era. I think it was World War I? No, it was World War II. He flies the airplane into present day, and he ends up realizing where he's at, and that time ends up being different. I guess he realizes he has to go back in order to keep the present the way it is, and it's kind of sad, but at the same time, he did his duty, and he actually changed the outcome of the war by doing what he did. God is Love says, one of my favorite episodes out of season 1 for sure. JL says, great writing and just the right amount of mystery to keep you guessing. True. I love a good mystery when it comes to these episodes. Shark Adventure says, OG Twilight Zone was the GOAT, and this was a great episode. Wonderful story of redemption. Very true. Factory Old Fork says, don't listen to the hate comments. They obviously don't know what reaction channel is. If they wanted to watch the episode without you, they would go and find it. This is true. There's a lot of people who actually commented on this episode saying that, why are you talking? It's your reaction and commentary episode channel, so that's what we do. We talk movies, we talk TV. I'm going to be doing some other things too instead of reactions. But hey, we're talking TV, and it does say commentary and reactions on the bottom of these videos. So if you don't like it, hey, that's your prerogative. Go find another channel where it's just somebody staring into a camera and watching the show if that's what you're wanting. But this isn't what we're doing here. But Peter Cowboy says, what a great episode. Thanks for uploading. No problem. How Cute 1605 says, small tip, watch the whole video and then put all your reactions in the end. Yeah, then it wouldn't be a reaction. So let's move on to the next episode, which is episode 17. It's very comical, some people think, on these episodes, but I mean, everyone is welcome to their comment, and I'll read them. It is what it is. But hey, this is The Fever. And we talked about that in my bottom 3. Rob Gabor says, I really like this episode. Everett Sloan really gives it his all as a Franklin. A lot of people hate it, though. I didn't hate the episode. I said I liked every episode, but I can see why it was kind of least favorited compared to the other episodes. Elmer Medina says, Mr. Krabs after Patrick gets hooked. When they get hooked, SpongeBob, me boy, they really get hooked. This is true. Gambling is a bad thing. Vlad Lorinov says, it is very interesting to see your reaction to the film Space Truckers. This is a cool movie. Yeah, well, I mean, I have seen Space Truckers. It was definitely cool back in the day. I actually watched it maybe a couple years ago, and it's a little on the dated side. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's Dennis Hopper and Stephen Dorff, I think, was also in it. But very interesting movie. Hey, go and watch it for yourselves and check it out. Nene's hubby, you said the thing I did. What did she ever see in this guy? That's true. We're talking about the wife to the main star of this episode. And yeah, what did she see? I guess she was just so in love with him that they just stayed together for a long period of time, to the point where maybe she just got used to his antics. I'm not sure. Brandy74 says, my casino limit is usually only $20 to $40 for a few hours and playing penny slots. Once if the money is doubled, I tend to stop. The machine following him was funny, but the symbolism is there. Seems like Franklin had an addictive personality, which made slipping the few coins into the machine very dangerous, which we saw in the constant check cashing that then the death. And that's just true. Always give yourself a limit. Just walk in with like $100, and if you spend it, you spend it. If you don't, you don't. Always have a limit, people. All right, let's walk into the next episode, which is episode 16. We're counting down to episode 1 here, I guess. But yeah, this next episode is... trying to find it. There it is. This is The Hitchhiker, which actually ended up in my top 5 as well. Rick Kinnett says, you know you're in the Twilight Zone when a hitchhiking sailor ends up running away from a pretty woman who seems to be coming on to him. Yeah, there was a guy that she picked up and just didn't want anything to do with her once they figured out that she was a little off her rocker there. Dean Strickson says, Season 1 of The Twilight Zone has some connections to real-life tragedies and sinister events. Sadly, Inger Stevens eventually succeeded with her suicide attempts in 1970 when she overdosed on barbiturates. Also, Gig Young, the main actor in Walking Distance, murdered his wife and himself in 1978. Yeah, we read about that. Really, there are 2 more main actors featuring in Season 1. of the Twilight Zone who committed murder in real life, one who died in prison a few years ago. That's pretty crazy. The amount of people who actually committed murder in these episodes, pretty nuts. Films for smart people, 3587 says, Inger Stevens is stunningly beautiful. Sadly, she had a sad life since childhood. Yeah, that tends to happen. Yabo I Flats loves these videos. Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Wolfinger 1935 says, not the craw, the craw. All right, we got Carl Baker 7242 says it's a favorite episode of his. Well, it was in my top 5. The Seraph Network, I think the world and the people in it only exist in her mind as a way for her to cope with everything until her subconscious finally caught up. Oh, that's a good take. Yeah, very possible where that everything she was seeing that wasn't death who was waiting for her to actually pick him up ended up being just figments of her imagination or just something for her to cope. That's a good take. Michael Stallings, I think in the late 50s and 60s, the interstate system was not fully developed yet, so travel in a lot of area was still on 2 lanes or 4 lanes, though through numerous small towns, so I think a cross-country drive would take much longer than it does now. That's a possibility, very true. I have no clue what the speed limit was back then, and who knows. Review Sunrise episode, bro. If it's part of Twilight Zone, I'll get to it. Nan and the Hitchhiker are the only ones that are dead. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say death is dead, but yeah, I agree. You know, they are not a part of the living. That is for sure. But yeah, thanks for the comment there. It was just user, so I didn't know who exactly it was that commented. But we're going to move into our next episode here, and that is episode 15. I shot an arrow into the air. And I'm trying to remember what this episode was all about. It was, I think it was the School. Yeah, I know what it was. It was the astronauts land on an asteroid, thinking that it's an asteroid. And it turns out that they landed back on Earth, like right outside of a city or something. But Rick Kennett says, the Twilight Zone companion said it best concerning this episode. If you land on an asteroid with Earth gravity and Earth atmosphere and you don't realize you were on Earth, go back to astronaut school. All right, a user says, this is still my favorite episode of the Twilight Zone, maybe because it was also the first zone I ever saw. My physics teacher put me on to the series in my junior year of high school in 1982. This episode and all of the following made me think, and what did Corey do next? Go back to his family, stay in hiding. What do you think? Yeah, that's probably what, I mean, unless his conscience got to him. If the conscience got to him, then all of a sudden, that's usually what happens to people. They turn themselves in because they can't deal with the guilt of it. And I'm going to say that's probably what happened at some point, because you just can't go into hiding for that long. But, I mean, if they were lost, then maybe he could get away with it. But, I mean, I would think that the radar would see that they probably didn't make it out of the atmosphere. I'm not sure. I mean, but I want to go with he turned himself in because of the guilt. Bumpasaurus. You totally called the ending. By the way, I believe this episode was written by the same person that wrote Planet of the Apes. Similar ending too. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Now we're going to go into episode 14 of the Twilight Zone, and that would be... which one is this one? Third from the Sun. Third from the Sun. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to place this one. I love this episode. The score was creepy, and Edward Andrews was just so intimidating. Rod Serling wrote the time element, an episode of Weston House Desilu Playhouse. Okay. God is Love says, yo, what a twist at the end of this one. I don't know why, but I made a habit of chilling at the house with my puppy and watching random Twilight Zone episodes. It's low-key like entering a time machine back to old-school Hollywood, just because of how clear these episodes look in high definition, and Rod Serling added something great every time. Some episodes are better than others, but overall, all Twilight Zone gives off interesting vibes, and there's always a hidden message at the end. It's very true. The ride, which Tower of Terror was awesome at Disneyland, California. I've only been to the one at Disney World, which I would doubt that there was much of a difference. Felt like you were inside one of the episodes, but sadly it changed into Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. But it's still up in Disney World Orlando. Very true. So that's a good thing. I love that ride. Atreyu, are you doing Never-Ending Stories there with the name? I always liked this show, and I was young and didn't get the clue, but liked the episode very much. Thank you. No problem, bud. Ken Magnet says, that car kind of sounds like the electric car they have now. It does sound different. I do remember this episode. This is the one where they were trying to leave the planet. They had to leave and get out of there because something bad was about to happen. And so when the people actually get into they get into a car and it sounded weird, and I made the comment like, what's up with that car? It's like an electric car or something. And they end up taking off and actually being an alien species that goes to Earth. We just ended up being humans on another planet. So very interesting episode for sure. Laha actually says, yes to amazing stories and Friday the 13th TV series. It has nothing to do with Jason Voorhees. It's all about finding cursed objects and is a really good show. And you'd really like the Bad Seed original black and white version with a child actress that did a couple Twilight Zone episodes. Look up the little girl who plays Rhoda, Marky. Okay. I might jump into the amazing stories at some point in the future. Now, the next episode is going to be episode... Episode 13, The Four of Us Are Dead. Where does the four of haha, okay, this is from Laha. Haha, it's not Hotel Real, Hotel Real, Spanish pronunciation. I think the intro does say the main character is on a kind of path with a plan. So it's insinuating that he knows these people. He either knows these people or in their situation and he's done enough research to get what he needs for a short period of time, Harry Potter style. Okay, he's talking about this episode, The Four of Us Are Dead, and it's people that it's a guy who's able to take his face and change it, and he steals things. He also, talks with women and ends up doing some really bad things by changing his face and having that ability. It's a possibility. Sean J says there was an episode of The X-Files that was similar. Suspension of disbelief. Disbelief is really important here because facial features in one thing, but they couldn't have changed their hair length or color, weight, size, bone structure. Still, it's a pretty cool concept if you ignore all that. And that's true. He didn't change the size. It was always his face they were consistently changing. It's just interesting that they didn't go further into detail with that. But these are only like 24, 25-minute episodes, so it's kind of hard to do that and give specifics to everything. But thanks for the comment. Now we'll jump into Season 1, Episode 12, What You Need, and it has God Abandoned This Timeline. That's a name. It really makes you think. What I like about this episode is that the man saved Fred's life by giving the scissors, even though he knew Fred was going to threaten him. Yeah, this is the episode where we had somebody giving everybody what they really needed, not what they wished for, and ends up giving this guy scissors, and he was a real jerk, always looking for him on the street, wanting him to give him exactly what he needed, and he gives him scissors to cut his tie off to save him from basically hanging to death. And at the end of the episode, that same man comes back to him and says, I want, what you need to give me. And it turns out he ends up giving him something that is what the seller ends up needing, which is him to have him save his own life by putting that guy in front of a car who ends up getting run over by it. So, yeah, it's a pretty good episode. Daniel Wilson, a number of drama societies have actually done recreations of this episode. Not a striking episode, but a classic story that holds well. I agree. Daredevil, Fred is an asshole for threatening an old man. I agree. B.B. Bailey, you face popping into every other frame is really annoying. Maybe a tiny box in lower left with your face and comments would work better instead of interrupting the films every 10 seconds. Well, the problem is that I can't do that. I have to actually interrupt what's going on, because if I do, then I get copyright strikes. And I do it because it's actually commentary as well. We are a commentary reaction channel, along with we do some podcasts here and there, and we do some other things when it pertains to films. But we do commentary here, so if you don't like it, yay, you're welcome to move on. It's cool, no problem. So we'll move on to the next episode, and that would be episode 11. And episode 11 was actually something that I enjoyed, and I just didn't put it up on my list, and I'm kind of sad that it didn't go up in the top 5, but it is what it is, and it is And When the Sky Opened. And it has Rod Taylor in it. I love Rod Taylor from the Twilight Zone, also Twilight Zone, but the Time Machine. And this is one where there are 3 astronauts that come back, not realizing that they stepped into a place where they get erased from existence. And he's slowly doing it and watching one of his friends kind of go crazy, thinking that there was somebody else that existed that he didn't realize. And then suddenly he ends up being a part of the issue as well, where all 3 of them just disappear from reality. It's kind of a sad episode, but Rob A. Gabor says Rod Taylor was also in The Birds. Very true. And in this cult classic Birdemic, the lead character is named Rod after him. Yeah, that's true. J. Rex says, I'd like to think of this one as something a little bit more vague than Aliens, which is why it's so frightening. There's pretty much saying that the thing that let them get back that shouldn't have was pretty much fate. They dodged it pretty much, which is why they kept feeling like they shouldn't be there. Because technically speaking, in the cosmic scheme of things, they weren't supposed to be. And it was just nature fixing its mistake, one that lasted their entire lives. Yeah, definitely a bummer of an episode. X-Man 9473 says, this is still one of the creepiest episodes in the show. The fact that you can disappear out of existence with no explanation and one would remember you. Mix that with the acting of Rod Taylor panicking from this situation. I thought his acting was really great. Sad Bunny says, sometimes Twilight Zones don't work for me, but having a recognizable actor is all you need to sell you on a story. This, however, is just plain amazing. Now, I agree, sometimes a recognizable actor does give you the benefit, makes people want to watch it because you feel like you know that person in some respect because you recognize them. But at the same time, I think a good story is a good story. And if you have a good actor, regardless of who it is, it's going to be a good story. So I don't agree in that you need a recognizable actor, because I don't think you do. I think if you just make a well-made story and you also film it correctly and have a good writing team behind you as well, you can put something out there that's great as long as it's made well. I don't think an actor with a name will give you a good story, or it won't necessarily give you a bad one either. But I don't think it's really needed unless you're really trying to sell it to a foreign market or something. AstroStar49 says, most unsettling episode for me in this series. Thanks for spotlighting Harrington. No problem. Steve the Duck says, 1495, they're called the ship the X-20. It's worth looking up the X series of experimental aircraft, beginning with the various X-1s, researching the speed of sound and how planes might go faster than that. Then try X2, X3, etc., etc. I will give it a look. Yeah, I didn't realize that they were basing the X-20 ship that they used in the episode on actual X experimental ships. Toast and Jam says, one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes, but the very end kind of bugged me. If the spaceship never existed, why the barrier? Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm not sure. Derek7 says, please continue to do more of these reactions to a classic TV show, The Twilight Zone. I am, and I'm going to continue doing it. Nathan Fitzgerald says, it's scary because this is worse than death. It literally is being erased from existing. Yeah, it's pretty unnerving, I gotta say. Stephen the Duck says, again, to find a very similar story exploring another aspect, look up Philip K. Dick's Something for Us Temponauts. Oh, I will definitely give it a look. John Red, the episode seems very Lovecraftian, like a cosmic entity is out there with very little care for humanity. It seems like the humans are progressing enough to go to space and say no. Click the astronauts are erased from existence. Like the people who made advancements in space travel are just escaped livestock to be put down by an entity. Yeah, very true. I think it's just kind of a creepy episode altogether. And very worth watching. That's why I love the first season so much. And then we go into Judgment Night, which I did bring up in my top 5, and it's the World War II submarine captain, the German one. This is from Joan Mayer. She says, I am older. I remember Patrick McNee and John Sneed from The Avengers. Very sophisticated. Love this episode, by the way. Love from Canada. Thank you for the comment, Joan, and I will keep on clicking along. X-Men comes back and says, I think the format of not knowing what's going on until the very end works perfectly for this episode because it makes you sympathize with the main character until you finally get the reveal of what he's going through all of this, and it alters your perspective. I also liked that as well, and I didn't really bring it up in my top 5, but thank you for bringing that up because I did also sympathize with his character until I figured out who he actually was. Prince Loston says, mind-blowing, extremely intense, especially when he realized that he was in his own personal hell. Very true. Lazy Super Mutant says, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but Carl's accent seems to slip in and out before you realize the twist is revealed. I like the effect of him slipping in and out of his own identity. I did too. Alan, a.k.a. Rocket Man, I had to really think about this. This was a very powerful episode. I agree, it was very powerful. Matthew says, one of my favorite episodes. One of mine as well. I really enjoyed that episode and looking forward to seeing if there's more episodes like it in the future. Now let's go on to the next episode, which is episode 9, Perchance to Dream. This was a really good plot twist, one of my most underrated Twilight Zone episodes ever. Epstein-ism says, didn't anybody recognize actor Richard Conte? He was Barzini in the first Godfather film. Long Hollywood career, usually playing hoods. I did not recognize them. I might have to revisit it at some point. Stan Swan says, almost all the actors were older than the characters they played. There's an amazing list of actors that became huge stars that were on this show. Ron Howard's first TV or film appearance. I actually missed it when I first watched this episode, but really happy to see that somebody actually pointed that out to me. And let's move on to another one. It's Brandy74 says, good episode. Similarly, in the 80s and 90s, TV led us to believe 50 years ago were full gray-headed people like the Golden Girls. That's definitely not how it is today. This is true. It's not. And that was all for the Perchance to Dream. And then we'll move into the next episode, which is episode 8, and that is Time Enough at Last, which is the one with Burgess Meredith, who ends up surviving an explosion and gets all the time in the world to read all the books that he wants, and it turns out he ends up breaking his glasses, which he actually needs to read. So he ends up having eternity being blind and not able to read all the books that surround him. But Brandy74 says, good episode. I thought the blast in the vault was a result of him reading at first, like in his imagination from reading. Empire Jeff says, there was time now. Yep, sad face with a tear. Kiris Ma 9003 says, hello, my friend. 5 characters in search of an exit is my favorite episode. Really insane. Well, I don't think we've reached that one yet, but I will keep that in mind when I do get there. Steve the Duck, the message of this episode, humans, ordinary humans, given the slightest chance, will be idiotically cruel to the point of extermination. Yeah, it is sad, but it is human nature that we like to destroy. I'm not sure why that is, but it's just the name of the game, and it's kind of sad that that is the case. But Season 1, Episode 7, The Lonely, is the next episode we'll go over, and it's about a man who gets stuck on an asteroid by himself because he did something really bad, and it's like his prison sentence. And when he's actually put there, somebody actually brings him an android, a female android, to fall in love with, and he ends up falling in love with this thing, and it ends up being destroyed at the end when he's actually released from his sentence. So really good episode, and we have the first Comment from Stephen Mark Hansen that says, I love where you know Ted Knight from. I would have said first Too Close for Comfort or even the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Well, yeah, I didn't know that was Ted Knight right off the bat. I had to actually look. It's because I knew him from Mary Tyler Moore. It's why I knew who he was in this episode. Films for Smart People says Ted Baxter from Mary Tyler Moore Show. Yep, got it. Love Ted Knight. He's also from Caddyshack, if you don't know that. He was, I can't remember the character's name, but you would know him. Steve the Duck says Jean Marsh was a British actress who appeared in many films and TV projects. This is one of her few that I know of U.S. appearances. She also appeared in 2 different Doctor Who stories, Mission to the Unknown as a Space Patrol officer, and she was also Witch Queen Morgan Le Fay from Arthurian Legend. Oh, it was an episode called Battlefield. Helliskunson Art. One guy was in Gunsmoke, and the other guy, I think, was the Gramps in Problem Child. Yes, he was the Gramps in Problem Child. He was in a bunch of things. Jack, well, I'm totally blanking on his name now. But yeah, he was in Problem Child. Bumpasaurus says, cool video. I enjoyed watching through your first impressions. I've seen these episodes like 20 to 30 times each. By the way, it's Rod Serling, not Rod Sterling. Yeah, I know. It did slip out a few times back in the beginning of this when I was doing some of the reactions. I would say Sterling like an idiot. But thanks for letting me know that I did that. Steve the Duck. This episode touches on a number of things Philip K. Dick wrote about. What is real? What is the measure of a man? When law is mutable? Why is humanity so cruel? Yeah, this is true. Humanity can be a cruel, cruel thing. Robbie1816 says, just a random thought while watching some of your videos, have you considered reacting to any light comedy? Tim mentioned Numbers, specifically Prejudice. Eventually I'm going to react to other things, but I'm concentrating on the Twilight Zone, and I do videos of like movie reactions as well, and I plan on getting to some other things, but at some point when maybe I get some more help on this channel, I might be able to do something like that. God abandoned this timeline. Says, I always feel bad for Alicia. She might not have been a human biologically, but she had the same senses and feelings as one. Killing her was such a quick decision to fix the problem that it was cruel for her. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the fact that she was destroyed at the very end of the episode. I was very bothered by it, but that's just the way it is, and that's just the Twilight Zone. But we'll move on to episode 6, Escape Clause. And yeah, I do remember this episode. It was kind of a bummer where the guy ends up in prison. I don't remember the majority of this episode. It was one of those episodes that didn't really stick in my head. But Brandy74 says he definitely went to extremes to test out the immorality. That was wild. That's right. I do remember he was testing some limitations to things he could do. Lazy Super Mutant says, fun detail that I never noticed before, but the devil has a little Satan pin on his lapel. It really adds to the jolly shyster personality that Tom Gomez gave the character. Yeah, that's right. He met him and was giving him wishes and whatnot. I'm a Tim Buck2 says, I'm a hypochondriac, but I take a placebo for it. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure the placebo helps too much, but if it helps you out mentally, then you keep on taking those placebos. We'll move on to episode 5 of the Twilight Zone. It's Walking Distance. I do remember this episode. It also, I believe, has Ron Howard in this one, and it's about a man who goes back to his childhood town after he ends up getting a flat tire, and he walks there, and what ends up happening is the man actually walks into his hometown when he was a little boy. Like he goes back in time when he walks there and meets his parents, and he ends up running back and ends up not going the way he wanted it to. But yeah, it's like revisiting your own childhood kind of thing. But Brandon, Florida 1092 says, brilliant choice of material. This is one of my favorite episodes. The constant mocking was about the fastest way to turn me off your channel. Okay, well, I kind of wish you stuck around, but I mean, I wasn't trying to mock the episode. This is the one episode I did with Chad, and we like to cut up and have some fun with the episodes, but if it wasn't your cup of tea, it wasn't your cup of tea, and I do like the fact that you at least visited, but we'll move on to the Night Star. What an absolutely awful episode to one of the best Twilight Zone episodes. I mean, okay, thanks. I don't think I was that awful, but I'll keep on going. Get7740 says, this is one of my favorite episodes. You guys will get it when you are in your 60s. I mean, I kind of understand it now. I didn't think I misunderstood this at all, but I thought it was a good episode, and I totally get about wanting to go back in time and revisiting some of the experiences I had as a child. But anyways, we'll move on to Philly Mike 3181 says, this episode was personal for Rod Serling. The merry-go-round is still in Rod Serling's hometown of Binghamton, New York, inside a building now, with scenes from the Twilight Zone shows around it. Oh, okay. This is from user, which I've seen this user before. He didn't give a name, though. I don't think it has a name. But yes, two guys trying to outdo each other being clowns. Just stick to your solo act with Rod Serling's material. I mean, he hasn't done an episode since with me, but we still do movie reactions together. But sorry that he's not your cup of tea, but hey, he's my friend, and I enjoy doing the shows with him. Filmed for smart people. Opie is Ron Howard, I think, which, yeah, he's talking about the little boy. This is true. Hader Awa Nakvi 8357 says, no wonder you guys don't have any views or reach so far on this. You approached every single thing with stupid comedy. This was one of the best episodes of the season about nostalgia and missing being a child and the burden of adulthood and responsibilities and wanting to be a kid again. It didn't go over my head that was the case for this episode, but sorry that this episode wasn't your cup of tea when it came to the reactions, but it is what it is, and you just can't please everybody, but I try to be respectful of everybody, but sometimes it's just it's kind of hard. But I mean, if you comment below, I prefer respectful comments. At least nobody's calling me a jerk or, saying derogatory things. But anyways, episode 4, the 16mm Shrine. I enjoyed this episode where a woman really dives into the movies that she used to be in when she was youthful. And she's kind of an aged actress now. She's like, I think in her late 40s, maybe in this, maybe she's in her early 30s. I'm not in her early 40s. I'm not sure, but she's older than she was when she was in her prime. And she ends up being sucked into her own movies and ends up living in them. I thought that was pretty cool. It's almost like a Last Action Hero sort of thing. But John Ligone says, one of my favorite episodes. It is a really good one. It would be in my top 10 for sure. Brandy74 says, this was an okay episode. She was a super unhappy woman and did seem happy on screen at the end, but it ended so quickly after we saw her in that world. I feel like we should have gotten a little more or something like that. What? I'm not sure. Well, yeah, it's just an episode where she didn't like her reality and she wanted to get out of it. So it was kind of sad to see her in that predicament, and she wasn't happy that she was aging, but it is what it is. But let's jump into the next one, which is episode 3, Mr. Denton on Doomsday. I really enjoyed this one. It was also probably something that would end up in my top 10, if not top 15. And it was about a guy who gets this stuff from somebody and takes a drink and realizes that he is not just a gunman. He wants more in life. He wants to quit. He doesn't no longer want to be the guy that people actually come to town to want to fight all the time, and ends up falling for a girl at the end of it. So it ends up being one of those episodes that has a happy ending, and really enjoyed this one. But Michael Stalling says, Dan Daria, Mr. Denton, appeared in many TV and movie westerns, usually as the villain and one of the most popular actors of that time. Yeah, I thought he did a very good job in that episode. But we'll move on to episode 2 of the Twilight Zone, which is One for the Angels. And I do remember this one. This is the one where the guy ends up, I think it had something to do with, he was making wishes, and he was a salesman. That's right. And death was coming for him. But he wanted one thing in life, and that was to have a good sales pitch. He wanted to sell somebody. And in order to do that, he had to sell I think it was the devil or an angel, about what was going on. And then there was a little girl, and he won more time to stay on Earth, but he ends up giving that away because of the little girl. Somebody had to die, and it was either him or the little girl, and he was an older man, so he ended up taking the spot of the little girl instead. But anyways, the comment, Motown Rocker USA says, the robot at the beginning was Robbie the Robot from the movie Forbidden Planet. The guy that designed him also designed the Lost in Space robot, which is why they look very similar. Daredevil Ill says, my favorite sci-fi TV show are from the 1950s and 60s, Star Trek and the Twilight Zone. Well, those are my two favorite ones as well. David Taylor says, whimsical death. Very true. Orchid Fancy says, this one is good one. This is true. And Paquina Reinha says, Tres Atores des... I don't speak Spanish. But thanks for the comment, and I do appreciate it. Then we'll go into episode 1. We are finally reached the first episode. And that is Where Is Everybody? Which is the one I talked about that is on my list of top 5 list. Where the guy is actually inside of a capsule, not realizing that everything that's happening to him in this town is all in his imagination. But Brandy74 says, good episode. I wasn't sure where it was headed, but I like the twist. Some people can go insane without anyone to talk to. These days, I go insane around people. It's okay. This is true. Stephen the Duck says, the town set was a standing set for many decades. It can be seen in almost any U.S. TV series, such as The Invaders, Peyton's Place, as well as a few movies, It's a Wonderful Life, Gremlins, and Back to the Future. He also says space travel for mankind was only a couple years away, not 10. I think I misspoke there. I'm sorry there, Stephen the Duck, because I did say something about being 10 years. I meant the moon landing in general. Yuri Gagarin in Vostok 1 was first, then the U.S. began to try with the Mercury flights. The long-term flights began with the Voskhod and Gemini missions, up to 2 weeks, the time for a trip to the moon, several orbits, and return. This episode actually was following the development quite well. Others did as well. Yeah, that was mostly because I misspoke. I know that space flight was going on in the early 1960s, and I meant that the moon landing happened in 1969. So, and that was 10 years away. Kin Magnet 2 says, yes, I'm pretty sure that's where Back to the Future was filmed, at the Universal Lot. Thanks for your reaction videos. Thank you for tuning in, Kin. And John Lagone says, my favorite TV series of all time. It is probably going to end up in my top series as well. Stephen the Duck says, Logan's Run had a machine-controlled, youth-oriented society that executed everyone over 21, as no knowledge or thought was needed to run a pre-programmed society. The movie of the book raised that the 30 to enable some real actors to appear and take some of the horror out of it. Okay. Man, I wish I knew what that was in reference to for that first episode. Walter Alexander says the people were eliminated at 30 years old in Logan's Run. I must have made a reference to Logan's Run in this episode and just forgot. Alan, a.k.a. Rock Kite Man, says this was a good episode. I agree. Stephen the Duck says recommending The Outer Limits, which can sometimes be superior and one step beyond an earlier U.S. TV series of similar but more random subject matter. Oh, interesting. Hey, where are you from, Steve the Duck? It would be interesting to know where you're from. Blue X385, Peacemaker versus John Wick. Oh, okay. I do versus videos sometimes for my channel, so maybe I'll do that one. But that was the last comment for this channel and for this Season 1 episodes. Tune in next week where we'll be jumping into Season 2 of the Twilight Zone. And I'm going to be doing the comment section for every single episode. So that should be interesting to kind of do a change up on that as well. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue on this journey to episode 156. And until next time, see you later.